The Dawn Show on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT and the free Odyssey app.
Imagine getting this in the mail, this letter, and this is how it began. We had told you about it, but what is the latest and why? Why is it that this story of threats against registered voters, citizens, patriots, why isn't this not in the headlines? Well, let's find out, because, of course, the letter said, among other things, we know where you live. How creepy is that? Threatening your pets, your family, your life. Because you are an American. You are a patriot. You are a voter. Isn't that a good thing? This is not allowed. Isn't this a threat to democracy? Well, let's get the very latest on legal efforts to make sure that anybody in America, doesn't matter how you vote, but that voters, Americans, would be protected. J. Christian Adams is with the Public Interest Legal Foundation joining me now, and it's so good to have you here. Thank you for being here today to detail and update us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
This is not something that should happen in America.
Can you detail for us exactly, these kind of what people were threatened by? And as well, even though we all want to be strong, and it's easy for me right now in a secure building to say, hoorah, we're going to fight this. But when it's your home, your family, your pet that you might let out in the middle of the night and you're looking over your shoulder, I imagine that this individual, this is terrifying. It's a form of terrorism, really.
Well, of course it is. And it all started in October of last year when people all around Philadelphia got a letter in the mail addressed to neighbor in big block letters on the envelope. It came in the post office with a stamp. And when you open it up, it says, like, you have a Trump sign, you have a Trump flag, and you need to be aware that in the dead of a cold night in the winter, we may come visit you when your family's there, shoot your cat, and more. Yeah, and so this got sent in the mail to people who had Trump signs. So it meant, and this is the important part, that they must have staked out their house to find that they had these signs. And this is a federal civil rights violation. You can't send death threats to people based on who they want to vote for. You can't use the mails to terrorize. And so we filed a federal civil rights lawsuit in Philadelphia representing some of the victims of these letters.
And so what can you give us some examples of the details of how these individuals how these victims were terrorized and threatened?
Yeah, I mean, look, the first part starts with they had to be visited, right? Yeah, the addresses, not everyone on the street got them. Only the people who had signs out or a flag out got the letter because they were supporting Donald Trump. And it came in the mail on a regular 8x11 letter with a stamp, mailed in Pennsylvania. In other words, somebody around Philly was going to mailboxes dropping these letters, and it was addressed in, like I said, crazy block letters. And you open it up, and it looks like it's a real letter, but then it gets into these threats about visiting and shooting and killing. And, someone did it, and that someone might be listening to the show right now. That someone's girlfriend might be listening to the show, and that's why we have a $2,000 reward at the Public Interest Legal Foundation for any more information about the identity of the people.
And so that reward that's active. How would this work? And if somebody, like you're saying, and this is a very serious situation, maybe this is a family member that's concerned, or maybe an ex-girlfriend even, or partner of somebody who says, hey, this sounds familiar, neighbor, and it looks handwritten to me. So if somebody has information, how do they go about contacting and reporting this and by the way, getting that $2,000 cash reward?
Yeah, go to publicinterestlegal.org, publicinterestlegal.org. The envelope is shown at the reward webpage, and there's actually some distinctive handwriting relating to the numbers, like the nines in the zip code, and someone might recognize that. It's someone might blab. You might have too many Yinglings, and one of your buddies said something that he's making death threats to Trump voters. Maybe a crazy uncle you have. I mean, there's people out there who might have a lead on this, and we'd encourage them to send us any tips. If to get the reward, you got to send the tip. But we're going to pursue this in federal court. This should not happen in America. People have the right to vote without having death threats, and it just shouldn't be happening. And frankly, where are the law enforcement officials? They've had this material for months, and do they have Inspector Clouseau working? I mean, why have they not gotten to the bottom? Why should a charity like the Public Interest Legal Foundation be the ones that have to get to the bottom of this?
And so in this, and you have this right at publicinterestlegal.org. It says, what it said on the inside. So I'm picturing this. You get an envelope with what looks like you think it's from your neighbor. Maybe it says neighbor, and then some distinctive. It's in handwriting, but it says, but more importantly, we know where you live. You are in the database. In the dead of a cold winter's night. I mean, this gives you chill bumps. I'm just picturing myself, you're home alone, maybe you get the mail, the rest of the family's not home.
And what's this database?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. The database of people who have Trump signs in their yard, apparently. Look, that's what triggered this, is these were Trump supporters in Philadelphia area suburbs, and there's some wacko out there who's probably still out there who decided it would be a good idea to make death threats to these individuals by the post office. And you just read some of it. And it's like, we're going to visit you in the dead of a cold winter night when your family's at home, your cat's going to get shot. And then it says ominously, and more. So you can't do this in America, guys. You can't make death threats because someone has a bumper sticker supporting a candidate. And that's why we want to stop.
And the threat piece of this, just to be clear here, is that when it says in here, they're threatening people's property. There's an actual threat here from what I see in the evidence that the family is being threatened. And even when they say your cat your cat may get shot and more. So there's even a threat of how they may carry out this threat through a shooting.
Yeah. And folks, just so you know, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, very famous legislation, made it both a crime and a civil violation to do this sort of behavior. So this is hardcore violations of the law. What are we, May 7th now? We're what? December, January, February, March, April, May. We're 6 months, over 6 months from when these letters were sent. The postal inspectors should have figured this out and made arrests by now. I mean, I'm just going to say it. We shouldn't have to do this for them. We shouldn't have to get to the bottom of this. It should have been dealt with immediately. They've got the tools to figure this out. They know how to do this. Why hasn't it been done? That's another question. So
we know why. I mean, let's just imagine that these are individuals with a blue sign that says support, fill in the blank, Democrats. Do you think that your clients who you're representing in their civil rights and their rights, do you think they would be treated differently by the system?
Well, I hope so. I think if somebody made a death threat because someone had a Kamala Harris sign, they should be in jail right now. You can't do this in America. And there shouldn't be anybody who says, oh, no big deal, it's just a Trump voter. That better not be the attitude inside the law enforcement agencies who should be getting to the bottom of this.
And so for these plaintiffs, for the victim, in other words, they're suing what? The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So, and what is the legal action? What fruition should, what's the hope here?
Great question. They're suing John Doe because we don't know who they are. And the courts have allowed plaintiffs in similar cases to sue John Doe and then take the time to find John Doe. And that's why we have a $2,000 reward if your knucklehead cousin is talking about these funny death threats that he sent to Trump voters. Come cash in. Let us know about it. Publicinterestlegal.org. We are going to try to find the identity of the people and then name them as the defendants, but the case has been filed.
And what's the timeline? So now you've filed this Public Interest Legal Foundation. It's in the courts, and you've vowed that you're going to litigate to protect the right to vote, everybody's right to vote, not just conservatives, which is what you've said. So what's the timeline here?
Well, we're going to diligently pursue who these people are. We're going to do the investigative work as best we can that apparently the postal inspectors are lollygagging about, and we're going to try to find it. The timeline, I don't know, but we're going to go as quick as we can and as zealous as we can to vindicate the right to vote.
J. Christian Adams, what does somebody do if they want to also support, because you've said you're a nonprofit organization and representing this situation. So if somebody wants to volunteer to learn more about your organization or even donate money to help, where do they find you?
The website, publicinterestlegal.org. Some people call us PILF, but it's publicinterestlegal.org.
And as you move forward, are you getting a good response, or is it just total lack of response? And is that why you're filing this, to get the attention of everybody and say, we're not giving up on this. We are persistent in this effort to get justice?
Well, we're filing it because it's the right thing to do. Nobody should get death threats because they have a Trump sign in their yard. That's not America. That's what goes on in other countries and in other times of world history. It's not something that is an American behavior, and you have to stand up against it. You can't just say, oh, no big deal. You can't just say, oh, it happened in the past. We're past the election. We're not going to care anymore, because it'll happen again, and it might happen to someone listening. Yeah. And you just cannot tolerate this kind of behavior in the United States.
Can I just ask you, as far as the client or clients, the victims in this, how are they doing?
Well, look, nobody is the same after they open up a letter threatening to be killed because of who they're voting for. Because remember, it means that they staked out their house. For them to find these victims, for which there are scores, which ought to make it really easy for the postal inspectors to figure it out by now. But there's scores of victims who got this letter. When you get that letter and you realize, oh my gosh, somebody just drove by my house in the last couple of weeks and are now sending me a death threat, you're not the same after that. And that's why we have to do something and get to the bottom of who sent these letters.
Yeah, and it's concerning as well. Many people listening right now have such signs still, and maybe they didn't get a letter. My friend Mary in the Montgomery County, I won't say where, she was home alone. Her husband was still at work, and their Trump flag, they had a sign, then they had a flag. It was vandalized. A lot of different people, wonder, am I, the Trump sign vandalized? Am I in this database? Am I next? And that is concerning moving forward, that they're gathering up some kind of a database.
Yeah, the fact that anybody twisted enough to do this is still out there ought to be a rallying cry. And folks, look, this is America. We still revile over behavior like this. This is a country that believes in political speech, free speech, the right to vote without threats of violence. That's who we are, and that's who we have to stay. And people need to have courage, but they also need outrage that this occurred because it should not happen in America.
Amen. Well said. J. Christian Adams will certainly follow you through this court case. Public Interest Legal Foundation. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
The Dawn Show on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT and the free Odyssey app.